You're listening to Stephen Mack's Classic Movie Podcast on iTunes, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, YouTube and on OneMusic.pro.
Hey, it's Stephen McDermott here, and you're listening to Stephen Mack's Classic Movie Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. You can subscribe on iTunes, also on Stitcher and on Buzzsprout as well. And you'll also find my podcast on YouTube, as well as onemusic.pro. Make sure you check out that website for some of the very best tunes around. And today in our Classic Movie Podcast, we are going to 1990, and one of the greatest mafia movies out there. Obviously, there's The Godfather as well, amongst many others, but one of the greatest mafia movies. We are, of course, talking about Goodfellas.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Ray Liotta, amongst many others, with a supporting cast of Lorraine Bracco, Paul Sorvino, Frank Vincent, the late great Frank Vincent, who passed away quite recently, and a wonderful examination of the Italian-American mafia. And we follow the story of young Henry Hill, who dreams of getting respect and being feared, and we watch him as he watches with great jealousy and great fascination across the road at one of these little mafia kind of restaurants where everyone hangs out, and he dreams of becoming a part of that lifestyle, and pretty soon he does, doing odd jobs around for some of the gangsters, and eventually he gets taken in by the family. And it's at that point then that he meets Jimmy the Gent Conway, played by Robert De Niro. An intense character, a famous character, but nonetheless an incredibly violent character as well, and a man that is feared. But Henry looks up to him, as he does where he meets Tommy DeVito, played by Joe Pesci, and probably one of the most terrifying characters you'll ever meet in movies is Joe Pesci's portrayal of Tommy DeVito. Now, what you have to remember is at the time, during the making and screening of this, Henry Hill and Tommy DeVito and Jimmy the Gent Conway were all still alive and incarcerated, and it was a trick obviously of De Niro, and we know De Niro as being a big method actor, that he decides that he wants to find out and inhabit the character of James Conway, and he does, right down to the point at which during breakfast with Tommy's mum, played by Martin Scorsese's mum, who happens to appear in a lot of his movies, where he puts out the ketchup, he rolls it between his hands, and that's because James Conway rolled it between his hands. Now, Ray Liotta at the time didn't, Scorsese had asked that he did not meet the real Henry Hill, but he listened to hours upon hours of recorded conversation that Henry Hill gave to Nicholas Pileggi when he was writing his book, Wise Guys, and it enabled Liotta to kind of inhabit the character as well. But there was a wonderful supporting cast. Obviously, Lorraine Bracco playing Karen Hill, Henry's wife. She went on, obviously, to play a pretty big role as well in The Sopranos. And we've also got Paul Sorvino, Frank Severo, Mike Starr, as we mentioned, the late, great Frank Vincent, who plays an integral part in the movie as the character of Billy Batts, because it is at that point, the Billy Batts murder that occurs in the movie, that we see things start to take a little turn off for the worst. The movie, essentially, it's a rags to riches to rags story about a guy who wants to be a part of the mafia. He can never be a full member because he's got a bit of Irish in him. Which is probably not a bad thing, but he can never be a full member. And to be a full member, a made guy in the mafia, you need to be 100% Italian. But nonetheless, his character, his friends, Tommy DeVito and James Conway, with the three of them, they get involved in heists, the Lufthansa heist, and we see some unbelievable camera work there as well, especially at the point in the movie where the Lufthansa heist has been pulled off and everyone's got their money. But we look at Robert De Niro's character, and it's with the music, and the music in Goodfellas with Scorsese plays an integral part in the whole movie itself. And there's a point at which you see Jimmy Conway standing at the bar smoking a cigarette, and the overtones of Cream come in, and it's just, we look at De Niro, we see the close-up on his eyes, and we realise at that point that no one's getting the money off him. He wants to keep all the money himself. But there are some wonderful, wonderful scenes in this movie, as well as the wonderful soundtrack, as we say, the likes of Cream, Eric Clapton, amongst many others. But it's this particular scene as well, where we see eventually that Ray Liotta, driven by paranoia, driven by drugs, realises that he has no option but to turn state's witness. And it's at that point that his life has taken a complete and utter nosedive, and he realises that things will never ever be the same again, because he will now be breaking one of the oldest codes in the mafia, the code of omerta, otherwise known as silence. And here he chats to a real agent. The guy who plays the agent here is the real agent who took Henry Hill's testimony at the time, and he's here with his wife, realising that that's it. His good life is over.
And you meant whenever you move me, I asked you once, and I'm going to tell you again, I don't want to go any place that's cold.
You really don't have a choice in that matter.
Ed, come on. Just whoever controls it, just no place cold, all right? Do that for me. He's
bronchial, that's why.
Well, if he's legitimately bronchial, we'll take that into consideration.
Bronchial. Would you like to go someplace that's not cold?
Okay, can I ask you some questions here? What about my parents?
What about them?
Am I going to see them? Am I going to talk to them? I mean, don't I have some kind of contact with them?
No.
No. No, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You mean to tell me that, God forbid something happens to my parents and they get sick, I can't go and see them?
Maybe something can be worked out. If they're sick, if there's some extraordinary set of circumstances, maybe something can be worked out.
I can't do this, Henry. I can't. I can't leave my parents.
Excuse me, Karen. I told you before, I'm not going to do this unless you and the kids come with me. I can't do it without you, okay? So you do whatever, but that's it.
You need Henry. You don't need me, right?
That's right. And frankly, I don't care whether you go or not. If it's going to make him a happier witness, a better witness, I'd like you to be with him.
They want Henry. They don't want me.
But Henry's going to be in a witness protection program. They're not going to be able to get to him. The only way they can get to him is by getting to you, getting to your kids. If he goes into the program, forget about it. You're in a great deal of danger. I think you understand.
I don't know
that.
anything.
Come on, you don't know anything. Don't give me the babe in the woods routine, Karen. I've listened to those wiretaps, and I've heard you on the telephone. You're talking about cocaine, because whether he goes to jail or whether he stays on the street and he beats the case, he's a dead man. He knows it and you know it.
And there you have it. That's Ray Liotta as Henry Hill, and Larry Silvestri, who played Detective Silvestri, who was, in fact, the FBI agent who eventually got Henry Hill to turn. And the movie itself is an examination of the life of the mafia over the course of 3 decades. But what we also see in there as well is how young Henry Hill, he's of Irish descent, his father works very hard, he's a somewhat violent man, but we see how he's pulled into the mafia, and we follow his life through. It's almost like a boy's life as we follow the path that Henry takes, where he's taken in by the glitz and the glamour of the mafia, but eventually realises at the end of the day there really is only one way that you're actually going to leave the mafia, and that's either, you know, in a box or in a jail cell. And it's a wonderful, wonderful portrayal by 3 unbelievable actors and an amazing supporting cast as well. And Martin Scorsese does an unbelievable job, because at the time, you have to remember, he didn't want to do another mafia movie. That was it. He was out. It was only until he read Nicholas Pileggi's screenplay that he said, yeah, you know, we have to go back in here again and revisit this again. And that's exactly what he did. An unbelievable movie. And I think it's summed up really at the very end of the movie, where Henry's in court giving testimony and he breaks the 4th wall. And for those of you who are not familiar with the movie parlance, breaking the 4th wall means that he looks directly at the camera and starts talking to you and explains to you exactly why he did what he did and why he is where he is right now.
It was easy for all of us to disappear. My house was in my mother-in-law's name. My cars were registered to my wife. My social security cards and driver's licenses were phonies. I never voted. I never paid taxes. My birth certificate and my arrest sheet. That's all you'd ever have to know I was alive. See, the hardest thing for me was leaving the life. I still love the life. And we were treated like movie stars with muscle. We had it all just for the asking. Our wives, mothers, kids, everybody rode along. I had paper bags filled with jewelry stashed in the kitchen. I had a sugar bowl full of Coke next to the bed. Anything I wanted was a phone call away. Free cars, the keys to a dozen hideout flats all over the city. I'd bet 20, 30 grand over a weekend, and then I'd either blow the winnings in a week or go to the Sharks to pay back the bookies. Didn't matter. Didn't mean anything. When I was broke, I would go out and rob some more. We ran everything. We paid off cops. We paid off lawyers, we paid off judges. Everybody had their hands out. Everything was for the taking. And now it's all over.
A wonderful movie, well recommended. If you haven't seen it, shame on you. Shame on you. Go out there, watch it now. Get it on DVD, get it on video on demand, wherever you can lay your hands on it. But do, and even read the book as well. The accompanying book is amazing. But it is a wonderful movie, and that's our classic movie number 4 in our podcast. And that is, of course, Goodfellas from 1990. Next week, I wasn't too sure would I revisit it, and then I said, you know what, I will. So next week we're going to be doing the original It movie, and this is the one starring Tim Curry. Okay, so if you have seen the new It, well, we're going to revisit the old It. Probably, it's still terrifying. I don't care. I watched it quite recently, and it still just kind of scared the pants off me entirely. So we're going to be revisiting the old It next week. If you want to subscribe to my podcast, please do. Show your support. You can subscribe online on iTunes, on Stitcher, and as well on Buzzsprout. And don't forget as well, you can listen to me on YouTube and also on onemusic.pro. But for the time being, from me, Stephen McDermott, go and enjoy your movies, watch Goodfellas, and we'll talk to you next week where we'll be taking a look at It.
You've been listening to Stephen Mack's Classic Movie Podcast. Make sure to subscribe for more great classic movies. You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Buzzsprout, and YouTube.